Hey guys, Haz here at Shield K9. It's been a nice long day of training, and I'm sitting here enjoying a fantastic cigar. And I said it's been a long time since I've been live on YouTube, so I should probably go live on YouTube. So today, it's going to be the usual kind of ask me anything style of day, but I will talk a little bit about some stuff that I've learned in relation to dog training in the last little bit. I'll just wait for some people to pop on here. So, good evening. How are you? It's strange. It's actually, oh, London. Good to talk to you. Just letting some people get on here and then we'll get started, guys. One of my favorite things to do, train a bunch of dogs, then chill out, have a nice cigar, talk about dogs. Dogs, dogs, dogs. All right, guys, so I'm going to start and I'll talk a little bit about something that I've learned. So, obviously I have a video. It's a pretty popular video out there already on how dogs learn and think and communicate. But as with anything, your detailed understanding of how dogs think continues to grow the more varied tasks and the more varied behaviors you train with dogs, the more time you spend. You know, the more things you do with dogs, the more you learn about them. And I don't think the learning will ever end, to be honest. So, one thing I think everybody should know about dogs and how they think. And one thing that everyone should learn about dogs and how they think is basically this: dogs think in terms of waypoints. So, if you guys have ever had kind of like more of the old school hiking GPSs, in those GPS systems, the way it would work is you would set up waypoints to either get to or as you were going on a route. So if you were like hiking in the backcountry, you would have this GPS unit with you. And you would basically, as you're hiking, you would set waypoints at various frequent intervals in order to find your way back again, right? Dogs think in terms of waypoints. So let's talk about something like a track, for instance. So if you're teaching a dog to track, dogs, what we tend to think about when we're training is we think about we think about the actual doing of the thing. But dogs don't think like that. The doing of the thing, yes, it's part of it for them, but the most important thing for them is the waypoints involved in the doing of the thing. So something like tracking, for instance. Let's talk about the waypoints involved in tracking. And you can apply this to anything. You don't have to be interested in tracking to understand where this leads. So when it comes to waypoints and tracking, what are your waypoints? The beginning, okay, that's a waypoint. That's something that's super obvious. Then you track, okay, so let's say you're tracking in a straight line. Let's say there's a corner. Well, that's a waypoint because that's something that's significantly different from the thing that you were doing. So, you start, that's a waypoint. You track a line, right? However long it is, whether it's 10 meters, whether it's 500 meters. There's a corner. That's a waypoint, okay? Then let's say you track another 20 meters. There's an article. That's significantly different. There's a waypoint. Then let's say you track another 50 meters. There's another corner. That's a waypoint, right? So waypoints are how dogs think. And if you find a way to make your waypoints meaningful, whether they mean good things or bad things, it's completely up to you, and it depends completely what you're training. You are going to have a dog who is going to do what you want him or her to do as long as you're able to make them think the right things at those waypoints. So I know it was kind of a bit of a mouthful of stuff. Oh, what the heck? Sorry, guys. Said, okay. So, anyways, yeah, waypoints are super important. And a lot of people don't control the waypoints. They don't think about the waypoints. So, and I used to be this person. So it's important that, I want to share this with you guys so that maybe you can learn a thing or two about this. Why is my dog out here? Look at this. Get out of here. He was inside. He must have gotten out. One of the kids must have let him out. Anyways, waypoints. So if I'm tracking, the obsession that we have as people that track, okay, so I'm training for IGP, just so you guys know, and the goal is basically to get a dog that can do, 600-700 paces without any reinforcement on the track, right? But how do you get to that point that you can go into a trial and you can run a dog on 600-700 paces over varied terrain without that dog losing concentration, without that dog missing a corner, without that dog missing an article? How do you do that without losing the dog? And that's the big question, right? And the solution that I found, right, whether it's tracking or literally any other behavior, is controlling the waypoints. So in the beginning, consistent reinforcement, because I want the dog to do these things. So let's say at the beginning of the track, I want the dog to go into the track with the right behavior. So let's say I put some food at the beginning, then maybe I put variable reinforcement throughout the track, but then I consistently put food on the corners. Then I consistently put food on the article and food after the article and food on the next corner, so on and so forth. And I do that over a period of time. And then I get variable with my reinforcement. Because I'm loading the waypoints and I'm making the waypoints meaningful, you're going to see, and this is, I'm going to tell you guys, and I've said this to other people, so forgive me if I sound like a broken record. I was having a problem with my dog on tracks. And one thing that I was having problems with was as the track would go longer and the reinforcement would become less, I would begin to see the behavior degrade. It wasn't that the dog didn't know what he was doing. It's that the dog would question what he was doing because the reinforcement became less and less. Sorry, guys, I'm losing my cigar. So, anyways. So what I began to do, what I would notice is sometimes the dog would do something very well. So he would always restart very well on articles, right? So I'd be in an article, and without fail, he would always restart very well on articles, no matter how variable my reinforcement was on the restarts, okay? So that's after the dog indicated the article, and I would tell him track again. He would always check for that piece of food that may or may not be there. And he did that so frequently. And that really made me think. It made me think, what the heck? Why is he so good at this? Right? And then he would be difficult. Like, he wouldn't be as good in corners. And I did 100 different things with the corners, right? He wouldn't be as good on the straightaways. Sometimes he would start really bad. And I realized, I'm like, the articles are super meaningful for him. They are a waypoint. And because your reinforcement there was very consistent in the foundation, the dog is now really anticipating at that restart the possibility of reinforcement. And the possibility, no matter how variable I would go, sometimes I go down to a 25% reinforcement rate there, the dog would always still check, and he would check very frequently, right? So it was very interesting. I said, okay, there's something going on here. Now, obviously, every dog's different. How they process waypoints is different. What your schedule of reinforcement that you can do at these waypoints is different. But for my dog, I definitely noticed that was very impactful. And for other dogs that I've trained to track, to be honest, I've noticed that that's impactful as well. What I found was I was focusing on the distance, right? I was focusing on the in-between. Between corners, what does my dog do? Between articles, what does my dog do? But my dog wasn't processing that. So a lot of us tend to think when we're tracking or any other behavior, we think about the in-between. When my dog's healing, how long can he heal? How does the healing go? It's not that you shouldn't reinforce the doing. It's that the dog doesn't think about the doing as much as he thinks about the beginning and the end. And the end is a waypoint. Okay? So if this makes sense to you now, you can start to see how you can apply that to anything, whether you're training a heel, whether you're training a long down, whether you're training bite work, whether you're training, any behavior whatsoever. If you can identify the waypoints in the behavior you're trying to train, right, or reinforce, you can really begin to control the dog's performance, right, with or without reinforcement. So it was definitely epiphany I had, and I learned the epiphany tracking. Obviously, you know things to some degree, but you can understand things in a much more complex way the more different things you do. So I don't just train pets. I don't just train protection dogs. I don't just do IGP. I do a lot of things with dogs, and I find that the more things that you do with dogs, the better you get at everything. And again, I know I've said that before, but and I know this probably isn't this isn't what most of you are here for. Most of you are here because you want to talk about pet training or bite work or something like that. But if you really want to understand these things on a deeper level, you do need to understand the things that I'm talking about. Controlling the waypoints and training. So, for instance, if we're talking about, let's say, a sit stay, all right, something as simple as a sit stay. What's important in the sit stay? If I want to get my dog to be able to sit, let's say, for 10 minutes, all right, and hold that stay, what's important, right? The beginning's important. So when I say sit, that's the beginning. The middle, it's important. I mean, that's what we all focus on because he's got to stay there for 10 minutes. But if I'm training it, what am I really going to focus on? I'm going to focus on the beginning and the end. That's what I'm going to focus on because those are the two waypoints within a sit that are meaningful to the dog. And if I can control the beginning and the end, right, when the dog starts and when the dog ends, and what happens at the start and what happens at the end, I can control the dog. I know some of you guys are asking. 60 gauge cigar? What is this cigar? I don't even know, It's a nice one, though. Main Street Habano. It's a good one, man. I got to get another one of these. All right. Let's see what questions we got. If it's a good question, I'll answer it. If it's a little bit silly, I'm going to send you back to the drawing board. Best way to train a strong initial bite. Bite work it's not just a behavior. There's an emotion attached to everything that you train a dog to do, right? Whether it's tracking, whether it's bite work, whether it's obedience. If your dog isn't strong in the initial grip, you have an emotion problem in your bite work, right? We tend to think of things just as behaviors. Behavior and emotion in dog training are very firmly linked to one another. And in bite work, usually when I have a dog that doesn't have a good initial bite is because he's in a very poor, his emotion isn't in the right place in the bite work. Maybe he takes a while to warm up, or maybe he just never warms up because he's never feeling the right way. And usually this is a problem where decoys are just trying to shove things into the dog's mouth and scoot ahead to the dog biting a sleeve or biting a soup before the dog is emotionally ready for that because the dog hasn't been developed emotionally properly. I wish decoy work was as simple as training a sit or training it down, mechanical. It's not mechanical. There's a lot of people out there that are able to be mechanical with dogs. There's very few people that can really build the emotion of the dog, make the dog feel the way he needs to feel about the various activities that you're training in order to get the most out of the dog. Mr. Has, when is your dog training course coming for other provinces? If you're talking about my dog training school, I'm working on a school for dog trainers. As you guys know, one thing I've found is, and I've decided to do this. I've made so many dog trainers. It turns out I'm pretty good at making dog trainers. So I've decided, you know what, I might as well formalize it. We're going to make dog trainers. That's one of the things that we are going to do. We're just going over a curriculum right now. We're going to establish a curriculum, and then we're going to have a school for dog trainers. We're not going to take on a lot of people all at once. We're just going to do a few people at a time, and I'm going to make really good dog trainers, and I'm going to certify those dog trainers. That's the other thing. There's all these BS certifications out there. When I certify people, it's going to be meaningful, right? To get my stamp of approval and to say that you're a good dog trainer, it's going to be a meaningful thing. And we're going to have all all that's in the works. I want to train and certify pet trainers, behavior modification, and protection. We're going to have all of that, so it's coming up. Get ready. Hey guys, I see y'all in here. If a green dog first bite on a sleeve is a very insecure bite. How can you build that up? This is the same question that I was already asked, right? It's the same question that I was already asked. You're rushing. You're not able to look at the dog and identify the emotion that the dog is in and say, hey, that dog is ready for a bite. There's very few times at this point in my career now, guys, where I'll give a dog a bite and be surprised at what happens, or that I'll even give a dog a bite before he's ready to take a bite. You need to build the arousal up. You need to get the dog into the right mindset, super aroused, super intense, and you need to graduate the dog through the equipment that is appropriate to that specific dog in that specific emotion that he's in, right? So I got a dog right now. I got a Doberman that I'm training right now, right? Really nice Doberman. I imported him. I like him a lot, especially for a Doberman. And one thing with him is, yeah, I could put him on a bite suit right now. I don't have him on a bite suit. I'm working handhelds with that dog right now. I'm working, sleeves with lines on them. I'm working, wedges with that dog. He's not ready to go on a bite suit. Could I put him on a bite suit and get him biting on a bite suit? Yeah, I could. Would that be good for him? Would that translate to long-term success? Hell no, it wouldn't, right? He's not ready for that. There is some development that needs to happen. We need to build that dog up. So rushing to equipment that isn't appropriate for the dog, giving the dog a certain style of bite work before he's ready for it, messes up a lot of dogs. How did I get Kevin so interested in food for his training? Guys, here's the thing with Kevin. So Kevin's the Caucasian Ovcharka, for those of you that are wondering. I've done some videos on him, and I'm training him right now. Here's the thing with Kevin, guys, and with any other dog. First of all, I'm filming a video series with these dogs, not just on YouTube. I'm actually filming a detailed instructional video series that is going to be going on my online course platform. So if you're on there, you'll get access to it when it's ready, or you'll have the option to have access to it, and you'll be able to see the whole process with Kevin, what I did step by step by step. And of course, I'll be putting some stuff out for free on YouTube. But fundamentally with the food, it's very simple. I stopped giving Kevin free stuff. His whole life was free stuff. There was no more free stuff, right? And then the other thing is, why does your dog not like food? So there are dogs that intrinsically value food a lot. Like they just value food a lot. They'll die for a hot dog. They can eat an entire meal and still work really hard for food. And they have just such a nice, strong internal desire for food. And then there are many dogs that don't, right? And you have to think about, okay, A, this dog perceives food as maybe not so valuable. And then B, how can I make the dog's perception of food more valuable? Very simple. I mean, I have free YouTube videos on this. Number one, stop giving free food. And number two, start making the food less about food and more about the interaction between you and the dog and the food, right? So my dogs don't just get food from me. I don't just say, here's your food, eat it. I say, all right, let's come take the food. Can you catch the food if I throw the food? Can you catch me if I've got the food? Can you take the food from me under various circumstances? I make the acquisition of the food very interesting for the dog, just beyond the act of eating, right? So if you can think about it like that, think about it as someone has a candy or something that you really want, okay? Or that you don't really want, but they're able to make the game of acquiring the candy way more fun than the actual candy itself, right? I'll give you an example. So if you go on like these cruise ships, right? What do, right? They have like all sorts of, like, it depends on the cruise line and of course what cruise ship you're on, but they'll have like these contests that you can participate in. Like you get together in a team, they'll put you in a team of random people and they'll make you guys do like these ridiculous contests, whether it's a scavenger hunt or I don't know, skits or some kind of like all sorts of silly nonsensical things. And they make you guys all participate in these teams competing against one another for something as simple as like, I don't know, a $20 to $30 bottle of champagne. Now, a lot of the people that are participating in the competition could easily buy that bottle of champagne for way less effort than they're putting into the contest. Like it's nothing for them to spend 20, 30 bucks, but they'll kill themselves to win that bottle of champagne because the contest, the competition is what gets them going. The act, the fun of the game and competing and being in a team and all that stuff, that's interesting and exciting for them. So when you make your food delivery less about the food and more about the competition and the fun and the game, now you have a dog that is willing to put a lot more into earning that piece of food. I think my cigar might be dead. Let's see. It's dead. It always dies when I talk about dog training. Let me see, guys, here if I can save it here. What are the waypoints in a focused heel? I'll answer that question shortly, my friend. Give me a second. Okay, so focused heel. The big mistake most people make with focus healing, and I have an online course on focus healing in case you're wondering. The big mistake people make with focused heel is that they're in a rush to get to movement, right? They're in a rush to walk with their dog. They're in a rush to get to the middle portion, right? The part that the dog actually cares the least about, the movement, right? They're in a rush to get to moving. I want to walk forward and I want my dog to focus heel. And they're just in such a big rush that they don't build the fundamentals of a focus heel. What are the fundamentals of a focused heel? Think about it. Number one, body position. The dog must be right next to you, okay? The dog must be in line with you. He must be parallel to you, right? You guys are supposed to be like this. You can't have the crooked dog, which most people do, right? In order for the dog to accomplish this, the dog has to have rear end awareness, and he has to have rear end awareness in relation to you. Where should my ass be in relation to you? The dog needs to know how to move forwards, backwards, side to side, and how to pivot with you, both right and left. And the dog has to know where to look, okay? Those are the important things that a dog should learn before you ever take one step forward. Now, let's say you teach the dog these fundamentals, all right? And then you start moving forward, okay? Where should we be rewarding the dog? What waypoints? I shouldn't say that. What waypoints are important? Okay, the beginning, all right? So how the dog comes into the position is important, right? That's a waypoint. So saying foos and the dog pivoting or running around you, however you've taught it, coming into the position is important, right? Then when you take that first step, very, very important. What's the dog's emotion? How does the dog feel? What does the dog do? And then when you're moving, that's the doing of the thing. It's not really a waypoint. The waypoint is the beginning. Moving is the doing. Then you have a right turn or a left turn. That's a waypoint. So if I turn right, something needs to happen. If I turn left, something needs to happen. If I pivot, if I do a 180, right, something needs to happen. If I halt, something needs to happen. These are all waypoints, okay? And when you start breaking your behaviors that you're training down into waypoints, right, focusing on teaching the dog first correctly how to perform each waypoint. Where should I look? When I look up at you, what should I look at, okay? When you turn left, what should I do with my body? When you say foos, how should I get into the position, right? When you sidestep, what should I do? When you take one step back or two steps back, what should I do? When you take one step forward, what should I do? The dog needs to understand all these fundamentals before you actually just start healing, okay? And what a lot of people do, and I see this, right? They got the food in their hand or the ball or whatever nonsense, and they just say foos and they start going with the dog, and they've just been luring the dog for like months, right? With the hand or with the ball or whatever. And they're under the impression that because the dog stays there, because they've put this giant piece of bait over the dog's head, and the dog has the appearance of healing, that the dog knows how to heal. And usually you see it all fall apart as they fade the reinforcement, as they say, okay, there's no more food here, there's no more ball here, you know, all of a sudden you see the heel fall apart completely. And the reason the heel falls apart is because all they did was bait the dog. All they did was bait the dog. And the second the bait goes away, the dog doesn't know what to do anymore because all he was doing was following the bait. He never actually learned how to heel. And I see that time and time again. Again, I have a complete online course on how to train the heel. There's no way I could actually tell you how to do that in one live video. There's actually numerous hours of video that I share in there on exactly how to teach that. But yeah, that's the waypoints. Every behavior, the more complex a behavior, the more waypoints there are. And you need to make your waypoints meaningful. I'll give you one example. So on my right turns, I like my dog to get active. In the Schutzhund routine, when I'm trialing my dog, there are there's a few right turns, okay? I can't remember how many there are right now. When I turn right, I want my dog to get more active because I need him to, it's kind of like a recharge point for me, right? So I turn right, I want him to get more active, more amped up. How do I classically condition that? Well, what if I turn right a whole bunch of times and reward him every time I turn right? So I don't reward him in the in-between, or I rarely reward him in the in-between. But then I turn right and I reward him. Think about what that's going to do, okay? Every time I turn right, I reward him. Then let's say I go from 100% reinforcement there down to 75, then maybe down to 50, then maybe down to 25 even. And then I kind of play with the variableness of the reinforcement schedule in the right turn. I guarantee you, every time I turn right, that dog's going to start anticipating. Maybe it's coming. Maybe it's coming. He turned right. Maybe it's coming, right? Think about that. Or let's say every time I turn right, I kick him out and I make him active on me. Depends on the dog. Depends on what gets him going, right? Think about that. So understanding the waypoints and loading them the right way, very important. Let's say I have a dog who likes to get in front of me in the heel. Here's a fun tip for you, okay? So I'm walking with my dog. He likes to get in front of me. A lot of people, what they do is they walk and they just go bang, 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 and they heel the dog, and they just keep popping him backwards as they heel or hitting the e-collar, and they just keep walking. And of course, the dog just goes in front, gets banged back, goes in front, gets banged back, and you see this happening over and over again. It's like, bro, he ain't gonna heel. He doesn't know what the hell you're doing. You know, you're just making this a miserable experience for him. Now, what would happen if instead of just pressuring the dog every time he goes forward, the second he gets past that line in your head that for you, that's too far forward, let's say his feet pass my feet, okay? Like let's say his feet pass my left foot. He gets a little too far in front. What I'll do is I'll hit the brakes and correct him every single time. So I'll be walking, walking, walking. Stop, correction, the second he goes forward. He comes back into the position. Good boy. Maybe a reward. Then we keep going. Every time he goes in front of me. Brakes, bang, correction. Right? Until he learns when he stops, I better stop. So now he's walking next to me, looking for that waypoint of me stopping instead of just walking. Right? He's with me and he's like, okay, he might stop. And if I miss the stop, there's going to be pressure. Right? But if I catch the stop, there's going to be a reinforcement, maybe. So you see how they think, okay? The big mistake a lot of people make is they don't put the right context on their corrections. Make your correction a waypoint, right? In many cases, I make it a waypoint. I make it something obvious. If I just keep walking in a straight line and the dog goes 3 inches in front of me, he's not going to understand if I start correcting him. But if I stop and correct him, well, now he understands. Hey, the instant he stops, there's pressure. So he starts paying attention for that stop. I hit the brakes, he goes, right, after a few corrections every time I stop. And he's anticipating. And then, oh, there was no correction. And, oh, my God, he gave me something. Wow. Suddenly stopping becomes a very important waypoint to the dog, right? Now, I'm heeling with the dog. And he starts to get a little excited. Maybe he sees something ahead. Maybe he's not thinking 100% about me. And I just suddenly freeze. What do you think he's going to do if I've trained him like that? Without even correcting him. Let's say I just hesitate or pause in my movement forward. What is he going to do? He's going to go, huh, and he's going to fix himself. Now I've installed a body cue where I just stop walking and the dog automatically fixes himself, right? So there's more to it than that, but I want you guys to start thinking in this way. Waypoints, really, really important. Really, really important in how you train a dog anything. When a dog is forward in aggression but in a defensive state of mind, when you run away, do they view you as prey or as turning off pressure? It depends if the dog's in defense or if the dog is in active aggression, right? So generally defense, big deep barks, whoa, 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 and you see a lot of backing up. The dog generally isn't pulling too hard on the leash. When you see a dog full forward, right, and the leash is tight and they're lunging into the leash, this is forward aggression. There can be a defensive mindset, but the dog is trying to come forward. So if you kind of run off to the side or you run away really fast, generally speaking, you're going to actually open the prey and also relieve the pressure. So you're kind of getting a 2-for-1. My dog down, but don't stay down. He moves. What do I do? What's the waypoints of a down, my friend? The waypoints of the down is saying down. Then the waypoint of the down is in the down, obviously, all the way until you make the end. Your dog doesn't stay down because there's no end to your down. The dog doesn't know what to wait for, right? So if my down, I say down, the dog must wait until he hears break. I don't say stay. Dogs don't understand stay. They understand down and they understand break. If he gets up before I say to get up, I repeat down, I make pressure, I put him back. He must wait until he hears break. I never let them break before I tell them to break. Break can be in 1 second or it can be in 10 minutes. It depends what you want, right? Do I have any videos on altering the emotions of a dog before they are put on a sleeve suit? I have an entire video series on protection. It is available in my online course. If you want to learn how to train protection dogs the way I train them, you're welcome to check that out. I have a Dutch Shepherd. She's a little shy sometimes, nervous. Will she ever be able to really protect? She's only 4 months old. Could it be a fear period? It's very early to say. I never like to see excessive nervousness in any dog. But, you know, who knows, right? Who knows? With the right kind of work, you can turn the dog into something. You have to understand, dogs are very contextual. So there are some dogs that under certain circumstances can be very good protection dogs and under other circumstances won't. So there are many dogs, for instance, that they're very good property dogs. They will protect the property. They'll be a very strong active deterrent on the property, and they'll probably even bite someone that enters the property. But you take them out in public, they're completely useless as protection dogs, right? Or you'll have some dogs that are very social, happy, outgoing dogs, and will only go on a cue because that's just their temperament, that's their predisposition. So there are dogs that are very contextual. There's some dogs that will 100%, if they're held back on a leash next to mommy, they will protect mommy, but if they're kind of loose and free, they won't. There are some dogs that will react to certain types of threats, but not other types of threats. You know, it's super complicated. Most important question of the night: what brand are you smoking? It's good. I have to remember this. Main Street Habano. Great channel. Would you say your personal German Shepherds are high percentage descendants of DDR? Thank you. Guys, I've said this 100 times. I have a whole video on DDR. DDR is bullshit. DDR is for people that don't know anything about working dogs. Nobody that actually trains working dogs, that, you know, competes with their dogs or anything, ever even says the word DDR. It is a marketing gimmick, and it's designed to sell people like you puppies. My 4-month-old Malinois Shepherd seems to be giving up when playing tug. This is almost like he complains that he isn't getting it. Any advice? Yeah, make your play more fun and make it a lot shorter. Make it more scarce and make it more valuable. The dog does not like food because he wants to eat cooked human food. I've seen this many times where people baby a dog and they allow a dog to get away, you know, with not eating what he's supposed to eat, and then they convince themselves, oh, he only needs to eat this cooked human food. I stopped feeding him. I only feed you real dog food. If you don't want to eat the dog food, there's no food. I'm sorry, my friend. Just like if you told me you don't eat broccoli, I'd say, "Oh, really? Well, let's see in a couple days if you eat broccoli." I guarantee you do, right? It's the same with the dogs. It's nonsense. People get stuck in these cycles of trying to feed this dog. Like they're always switching to different foods and trying to tempt the dog and hand feed. We don't hand feed. We don't do nothing. I put your food down twice a day, or I give you your food in training. It's your choice if you take it or not. If you don't want to take it, no problem. I offer you again tomorrow, right? Up to you. I don't get into cooking food for dogs. That's crazy. Dogs eat garbage in most countries. All right. Let's see what else we got. Does the genetics influence fear of thunder and lightning? Yes, it does. Uh, I have someone rehoming their Czech Shepherd due to extreme drive. Would you take him in? No, I don't take in dogs. I don't rescue dogs. Um, it's just it's not something that I do. I leave that to other people. I know I rescued Kevin, I guess you could say, but it's not something I do habitually. And please, guys, do not offer me dogs. I have so many people constantly trying to give me dogs that somebody else didn't want. If you have a truly exceptional working dog, and it's young, I might be interested, but most people don't. What most people term as extreme drive is just mediocre at best, high energy, high nerves. Not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for very special types of dogs generally. Hi, has nice book. Feedback here for the book. Maybe in the next edition, you should also write the title of the video instead of the URL. I'm just saying that because I like to watch them on my PC. Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you. Do you teach a dog to be active on the back tie? Of course. If a female is not very secure, a bit shy, and she bites the sleeve, she is a bit insecure. Her parents are very good dogs. IGP3. IGP3 means nothing. I've seen complete turds get an IGP3 title, but, would you breed her? Of course not. I would never breed a cowardly female. It's generally a recipe for cowardly puppies. What is your stance on obedience with single purpose narcotic dogs? I mean, look, if you want to do it, do it. Do you have to do it? No. If the dog is healing and you want the dog to stay at the same time, sorry, I'm missing this. Stay at the same time you are going forward. What cue and technique do you use? That's way too complicated to get into in a live, my friend. You're going to have to get the course if you want to really know what I do. How do you teach a dog that he must take a toy around a decoy? The same way I teach a dog he must take food around a toy. You must take it. You want the toy, you take my food. You take my food, you get the toy. You don't take my food, no toy, right? You break it down like this. It's the same thing. You take the ball, then you take the decoy. You do not take it the other. You don't get to pick what you take. I will decide what you take, and you will be happy to take what I tell you to take. Do you know any Canadian brands that sell a tall crate? No, I do not, unfortunately. Signs of a good breeder. What questions should I ask my breeder? You should decide A, what you want in a dog, and then B, you should uh, you should decide A, what you want in a dog. Then you should look and see who's producing those dogs. Who else has the dogs that you want? Where did they get them? And you just follow the trail, right? Follow the cookie crumbs. It's pretty easy to figure out. If I want an IGP dog and I want to buy a puppy, I'm going to look at who's producing the kind of IGP dog I like, who the parents are, who's using those lines, what they've produced in the past, who has those dogs, what have they done with those dogs, and then I'm just going to go to them and say, hey, man, I want a puppy, give it to me. I can always tell when someone hits me up that's been on one of these forums or these boards, and they have like this list of questions they're going to ask because they heard that a responsible breeder needs to have all these questions. I don't even respond to those people, right? Like, I'm like, bro, I'm not here. You're not interviewing me. I'm interviewing you, right? I do not need to sell you puppies. It's not going to change my day one way or the other. And most good breeders are like that, to be honest. They don't care if they sell you a dog because there's 10 other people that'll take your place if you don't buy it, right? It's got to be like that. If they're desperate to sell you a dog, then I would say that's probably the biggest sign. What kibble do I recommend? I always train with Royal Canin. It's my favorite. Um, I have a 4-month-old Malwa. Is it worth the puppy course for him or just the off leash? I've been training him. My puppy course, my online puppy course is, we don't use any tools in the puppy course. We just train the foundation with food and with some collar pressure. So if your dog is very good already, maybe you don't need it. Maybe if you want, your dog to be properly crate trained, to have a place command, to learn all the foundation to the behaviors like sit down, heel, stay, all this type of stuff that people need to teach a dog to do, come without using any tools, the puppy course is good for you. And then later on, you can add another course or you can get the elite course and you can do the off leash obedience. But a good foundation is important, right? You said you didn't care about your YouTube channel that much. Is that changing? It is changing in that I decided that, if you're going to do something, you should do it correctly. And I said, I'm not going to stop completely posting YouTube videos. I'm not posting them as much as I ever did, but I still do post. So um, I said, I'm going to make more of an effort here to make the video quality match the content. So, I have a videographer and I have him in a few days a week and we make some content. In fact, I'm going to put out another video later tonight. It's just waiting for me to make it public. So after this, I'll probably make it live. Can redirection around decoys be fixed or managed? Hell yeah. I fix redirection real quick, right? Redirection is a displacement behavior. I can't get him, so I'm going to get you. Sometimes there's a thought process behind it, sometimes there isn't. You want to talk about how dogs think. Dogs are stimulus response based, right? So a lot of the time they don't really have like a plan, so to speak, right? Like I have a plan. Like, okay, if you come up on me, if this person comes to me, I'm gonna shake his hand, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that, and I have reasons behind everything that I'm gonna do. I'm generally cognitive. I'm not just stimulus response. Dogs are exclusively, almost always, stimulus response and they can come into all sorts of different types of patterns. They're very pattern based, especially the working breeds, the Malinois, especially very pattern based. The Border Collies, even the German Shepherds, they can really pick up patterns, good patterns or bad patterns, depending on what happens. So a lot of the time, redirection happens because the dog tries to get to the decoy and he breaks the obedience to go to the decoy, and the handler corrects the dog. And at some point, the dog becomes so frustrated, maybe immediately or maybe over a period of time, that he then redirects him by the handler. And he achieves some level of satisfaction from that, whether it's getting his teeth in the handler, whether it's the handler's reaction, or whether it's just he had so much there and he had nowhere to put it and he just put it into the handler and at least he got to blow off some steam that way, right? And it just becomes a habit. It's not that he's like, okay, the decoy's going to come and I'm just going to turn around and bite this guy. That's not what happens. It's stimulus response. And like all bad codes, you can override it with a good code. But first, you have to stop the bad code. You have to stop allowing the dog to satisfy himself with that redirection. So, absolutely, it can be fixed. I'll make it very bad for any dog that redirects on me. To the extent that I'm going to override that little stimulus response in his head, where he's going to be like, you know what, I don't turn around and bite that guy. That is a bad idea. That is a bad idea. We don't do that. And you'll see it, right? They'll go, and then you'll see they kind of like they almost like head check, and then they'll be like, no, 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 we don't do that anymore. That's terrible, right? And then I give the dog something else to do, right? So it's all about recognizing the patterns you're creating and introducing pressure in a dog to the dog in a way that makes sense. Of course, you must introduce pressure when you're training a dog, but how did you introduce the pressure? Are you just pressuring the dog for non-compliance, or did you introduce the pressure in a way that he understands, right? And then you use it as a way to correct non-compliance. Would taking your course at least offer me a help in training a guide dog? I would say, Jason, if you want strong off leash obedience, my elite off leash obedience course will help you. Whether you need that for your guide dog, I don't know what kind of dog you're planning on training, but it would help you in that sense. Complete off leash obedience, which I think a guide dog should have. I'm not what is it, a expert on service dogs, but you have to decide for yourself, if that's something you want. Okay. Well, someone asked me, how long will you work on the foundations of bite work before you put the dog on the sleeve? It's not about how long I'll work. It's about what's the dog showing me. Is the dog ready to go on the sleeve? If he's not showing me the right behaviors, I'm not going to put him on the sleeve. It's not important. The sleeve isn't important, right? It's the dog's behavior important. There is a behavior that you teach your protection dogs in which they bark beside the handler. In which course you teach this? And is this something I can teach to a protection dog? Yeah, you're talking about the guard. I actually haven't put that into a course yet. I will, but I haven't done that yet. So someone's asking me, how do you break a German Shepherd that has food aggression when given a bowl of food? Um, you have to identify the waypoints in the behavior. What is the stimulus for the aggression? Is it the food being present in the room? Is it you putting the bowl down? Is it you putting the bowl down, leaving, and then coming back? What are the waypoints? What stimulates the aggression? And then how can you incentivize the dog to not be aggressive? How can you deconflict the dog, but then also correct the dog for being aggressive? These are the questions you must answer. And I cannot answer these questions on a live. But I'll give you guys some ideas. Whoa. Okay. So let's say I have a dog who's food aggressive. All right. Let's say I have a dog who's food aggressive. What are the first things I'm going to do with that dog? I'm not going to address the food aggression. I'll tell you that right now. The first thing I'm going to make sure I have with that dog is I'm going to teach him a strong functional obedience. I'm going to make sure I have complete respect from that dog on the leash and ultimately off the leash. Before I'm going to establish a structured play relationship with that dog. And once I have all those things in place to some degree, to a good basic level, then I'm going to address the food issue because I don't address issues in a singular fashion. I'm very holistic in my approach. Okay. And you should be holistic whenever you're dealing with any behavioral issue. Whenever you start saying, I have a food aggression issue, you're not really being realistic. You actually have probably a lot of issues. The food aggression is just probably the most pressing of those issues, but you can't address the food aggression unless you address all the other stuff. So whenever we're dealing with behavioral issues, we have a holistic approach. Okay. I gain the dog's respect and I gain the dog's compliance on the leash, and then I gain his respect and compliance off the leash. And I ensure that there are no other behaviors like reactivity, so on and so forth. Then when I introduce the food, I say to myself, what is the stimulus, right? Maybe it's just even having the food around and he tries to turn around and come for me. Well, in that case, I have no choice. I'm going to set him up for that behavior, and then I'm just going to correct him severely until he realizes that coming after me when I have food is a horrific, horrific choice. It's a horrific choice. Just don't do it. Once I've got that in place, let's assume that's rare. Most of the time, it's usually once you put the food down and then you go away, and if you try to come back, that's when they get a little bit nasty about it, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, why is he upset? Why does he not want me to approach him with the food? And what you'll usually find, again, a combination of learned behavior and genetics, right, is the cause of these behaviors. What's probably happened, right, is the dog has learned that you approaching is a stimulus for his aggression, right? When he has food, in the context of where he has food, or maybe he has a bone, when you approach, this is a stimulus for his aggression, right? So now what you need to do is you need to change that. So what I'm going to do generally, and I have a free video on this, so I have no problem sharing this with you guys. I'm going to approach, and I'm going to, as I approach, let's say, let's say he has a 5-meter bubble. I'm going to get to that 5-meter bubble, and I'm going to mark and throw food at the bowl, right? And something probably better than what he's got. So I'll go, chip, ding, and I'll throw that piece of food right at the bowl. And usually what will happen is the dog will be like, what's that? And then he'll be like, oh, wow, this is pretty good. And he'll eat it. And then I'll keep doing that, right? And then I'll back away. And then I'll come right up to the edge of his bubble again. and then I'll just mark and throw that food, then I'll back away. Then I'll come in, maybe I went 5 meters, now I'll come into the 4.5 meter mark. And as I come in, I'll go ding at the 5 meter mark, then a ding again at the 4.5, and I'll just stand there throwing food, then I'll back away. And I'll slowly build it up until he understands that when I come in, I'm going to add something to his equation. I'm not going to take anything away. There's no need for him to be worried or upset. I'm not taking his stuff, I'm adding to his stuff. And then from there, I'm going to build that deconfliction. And then I'm going to utilize my obedience. If I have a dog who will sit when he's told to sit, and come when he's told to come, and lie down when he's told to lie down, and go to his bed when he's told to go to his bed, how could I really get into a fight with him over food? Because he listens to me, right? I've already established a ladder of compliance, right? The compliance ladder, those of you that are involved in sales, maybe you've heard of it, right? It's basically getting people to say yes a bunch of times until, you get to the ultimate question of, will you buy this? And they say yes, right? Because they've already been saying yes. They're much more likely to say yes. It's the same thing with dog training. It's the same thing with dog behavior. Will you stop doing this, right? Well, if I just ask it out of the blue, the answer is going to be no. But if I ask it after he's already learned to say yes to me a lot of different times, much more likely I'm going to get a yes. And even if I don't get a yes, it won't be hard to convince them to give me that yes. Someone asked me, how do you deal with another dog invading your dog's boundaries? You said once you don't let it happen, but isn't that impossible? It's not impossible unless you live in like a third world country with like random dogs running around. It's very unlikely to happen, but if it does happen, I have two choices. Either I keep my dog away from that dog and I get in between them and I utilize these wonderful things that God gave me called legs to keep the other dog away, or I release my dog and you know, I let them interact with one another. And if my dog is overtly aggressive, I'll tell him to stop being aggressive. And because he respects me and I've established a good compliance ladder with him, he's going to listen. Or if the other dog's aggressive, well, then I'm going to try and safely get in the mix and separate the two and give the other owner a piece of my mind. And if necessary, I'll utilize these legs, as we already mentioned. Okay, let's see here. What are your standards for a good puppy, specifically for personal protection? Funny you asked that. I just shot a video today on selecting puppies and dogs for protection work. That video might be coming out sometime next week, so stay tuned. Someone asked me, have you ever competed? Is there anywhere you can see? I've competed many times. I don't even know how many shits and trials I've been in. Some of those videos are on YouTube. Feel free to check them out. All right, guys. Well, thank you for watching. It's been fun. I'm most of the way through this cigar, and I'm almost out of battery here. Oh, this is a good question. I'm going to answer this. Hey, Az, I'm getting a service dog for a place called Canine Companions. I was wondering how you can build a bond with this dog. I'm in a wheelchair, so activities like tug would be hard for me. You might not be able to play tug in an active way, but you can surely play tug, right? Just because you're in a wheelchair doesn't mean you can't play tug, unless you're like a quadriplegic, in which case you better have a dog that has, if you wanted to reward with toys, you're going to need a dog that has just so much satisfaction in the toy that you can literally just, deliver the toy and he just enjoys it with you, or sorry, by himself, without you having to interact constantly with it. Um, if you've got the use of two arms, which I truly hope that you do, you can certainly interact with the dog with the tug. You're just not going to be able to maybe go as hard as somebody that had two arms and two legs that worked. Um, Good. Sorry, guys, I just lost the thread there. But yeah, you can certainly do it. There's a guy called Jason, and I think he has a can't remember his last name, but he's in a wheelchair, and I think he actually might not really have full use of his arms even, and he trains in IGP. This guy is a fucking monster. You should watch his work. Like the dogs are super active, full power obedience. It's really nice to watch. I think he has a Facebook page called Pro Dogs or something like that, and he's in this wheelchair, like electric wheelchair, and I'm pretty sure he like can only move his hand a little bit, and his dog has some super nice healing. All the behaviors are really nice. You should ask him. I think he'd be a better person to ask because I mean, obviously, firsthand experience, right? What's the update with Lexi? I've sent a couple emails. Devin, so here's the thing with Lexi. Someone's asking about a dog available on our website. Lexi's a nice dog. She's a nice female, but we got to make sure she goes to the right home. I can't remember you specifically. I'm sorry. I don't. I'm not sure why your emails haven't been responded to. But look, here's the situation. If you've got a bunch of dogs in the house, it's not going to work for Lexi. Lexi's the type. I mean, unless you really know what you're doing. Like I could keep Lexi with a bunch of dogs, and it wouldn't be a problem. But Lexi's a bitchy bitch, and if you got a bunch of other female dogs in the house, I'd be concerned that there'd be like some bullying that would start to develop over time as the dog's allowed to get away with a lot of little things. She'll get along fine with a male dog, no problem, and she'll get along fine with the people that she lives with, no problem. But it's important for us to make sure she goes to a good situation. I really don't know how she is around cats. People always, oh, like everyone that asks for a dog recently has like a cat. I don't know how Lexi is around cats, and I don't make any guarantees about that. So that's Lexi. I think this thing is dying. Email me, Devin. Email me at shield, SHIELD, K number 9, dogs at gmail.com. And I will respond to you. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I think I packed a fair bit of good value into this video for an impromptu live. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys understand a little more about how dogs learn and think. And I hope I continue to understand how dogs learn and think even better and better. The more you learn about it, the better and better your training becomes. It's all about the waypoints.